But I do also wonder, is this a team that could be aggressive in acquiring more win now talent with the incumbent assets they have because they want to get better? Or was this offseason just more about, hey, we don't want to send OKC the number 5 pick, and so we're not going to accelerate the process to that degree? That's not what this is signaling. Or is there a chance, like I just mentioned, that, hey, and you kind of mentioned it earlier in this podcast about they want to, they can go in and they can get anybody. They can get any conversation they want, depending on who becomes available.
They are a sleeping giant right now. With every major name that becomes available, I would keep an eye on Houston. Every major name that from here until they actually make that move, right? Like whether that's Joel Embiid, whether that's Jalen Brown in 6 or 7 months, whenever he's eligible to be traded, right?
I think he can't be traded at all for a year at this point because of the Supermax stuff.
Right.
Would they? I think people would be shocked based off how they view Şengün. I think that Houston would look at Karl-Anthony Towns if he becomes available. The other name I would watch, like pie in the sky name, just 2 of them. I wouldn't be shocked if they took a look at Siakam. And I also would not be shocked if they took a look at Zion Williamson, depending on if whatever goes on in New Orleans there.
I think the 3 names there that, like, I would seriously consider. I think they're talented enough to like warrant, putting Şengün there, or obviously Embiid. Like Embiid's, just came off an MVP season. Like he's worth putting Şengün in, right? Like as high as I am on Şengün, I think if you have a chance to go get Embiid, I think you should try and go get Embiid.
For sure.
Yeah. I think Towns, I would think about it. I'm less like for it.
I wouldn't do it for this team. I just don't think he's what they need. I want to make that clear, but I do think that they would look at it.
I would think about it. I would, because he is that good offensively, right? Like he but I still think he's more of a finishing piece than he is like someone I'd go get, right? Like I think right now that's not someone I would go get right now.
They do feel like more of a team that, like, maybe they become sellers, like maybe Tate becomes available or something along those lines. They feel like a team that is, I don't want to say exclusively, but maybe exclusively are only going to chase the home run swing. Like they're not at a point where it's like, hey, let's just hit this double on the market and we're going to be a team that's involved on Bogdanovich or Bojan Bogdanovich or just any of these like sort
or
of
Pascal, as you said, right? Like I don't think they go after Pascal.
That's fair. I wouldn't. He's like higher end enough for me to look at. And maybe if there's a guy who's not a star, like, are they a team? They'll have, like, are they a team that looks at OG if he becomes available? Like, I could see something like that. They would look at Mikal Bridges for sure if he becomes available in Brooklyn. But like, those are all, I don't know where I land on OG, but like all the names we mentioned are pretty much like home run swings, which is what I think we gravitate towards because they have the assets. But just based off where they are in their development, it's not about hitting these singles and doubles. It's about these triples and home runs if those becomes available. And so I would, if you told me what's the percentage chance that Houston acquires like a top 100 to 30 or top 100 to top 40 player versus top 39 to top 10, I'm going to say it's more likely they go that higher end route than just this, oh, this guy's good or whatever, because that's just not really what they need when they have so many players and possibilities on their own roster to evaluate.
Yeah, if you're gonna go for if you're gonna consolidate, go consolidate, right? Like
That's
right,
more
like
succinct, better way of putting it.
Right, like I think I would go for the Zion. I would go for the Embiid. Like I would go for the guy who might actually be the best player on your team one day, right? Like I think that's the home run swing. That's the one where I'm like, yeah, I don't care what they just gave up because they got that guy, and I think that's the conversation worth exploring. And man, they're right. They have all the contracts, and they have all the young players, and there are teams that can go toe to toe. Like OKC can top them if they wanted to, right? OKC is like they're the real sleeping giant, but Houston's just right below them, right? Like they can be inactive in conversations.
Houston and New Orleans are just like the teams below OKC, where it's like if they want to do something, they have like not just the picks, but also just like the players teams would be interested in. And I am curious what you think on, my guess would be, and maybe they just become available, but like they're gonna look at something where it's like a wing type player or a front court player, where it's like if one of these guards becomes available, even if they're young, like Trae Young, if he hits the market, that's not someone that I would expect them to be in on. It feels like they would gravitate more towards like Paul, if everything blows up in LA and Paul George becomes available or something, like they're gonna go that route, or Mikal Bridges, even though some people might consider him a 2 or whatever. It's not. I just feel like with Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, even KPJ here and Jalen Green, I don't think they'll look at a smaller guard. Like if Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or Devin Booker became available, okay, sure. Or like, but they're not going to become available. Like if I think Trae Young's like the good barometer where it's okay, like he's really good, but I just don't think they're a team that would sniff around that. Sorry.
I might have done it if Jalen Green wasn't on the roster, right? Like he's the only guy. Like I just think if you're gonna go get a guard, go get a guy who's a plus defender, right? Like you have to get someone. I think you have to put a plus defender next to Jalen Green. And I think that's kind of why Amen makes so much more sense, like long term, and VanVleet makes a lot of sense short term, right? Like I kind of think they're I don't want to say they're set at the point guard position because Amen's downside is real, right? Like if he doesn't become a decent shooter, like he's just a project, right? He's just a failed project. That's what he is. Like it's just guys like him don't work out if they can't shoot. So, but like I kind of like where they're at though. Like I kind of like these bets. I kind of like VanVleet as a short-term bet, and like I kind of like Amen as a long-term bet there. I think we're kind of on the right track. They're gonna more likely trade for a front court guy, and I think if we're talking about front court guys, I think the guys that you want to monitor are the high end guys, and and that's when you got to look at the situations that are kind of in flux. Philly is kind of in flux. New Orleans is kind of
just a little bit.
Yeah, New Orleans is kind of in flux, right? Like these are.
Would you look at Brandon Ingram? Speaking of New Orleans, if he became where it's not Zion, it's decide, hey, Brandon Ingram's extension eligible. We don't know we want to keep him long term. Yada yada yada. We have Herb Jones. We have Trey Murphy. Not those guys aren't better than him, but you get what I'm saying.
I think about it. Yeah, I certainly don't think there's anyone on the roster where it's like, oh, I definitely think this guy's going to become a better small forward option than Brandon Ingram. Like maybe you could say the high end outcome of Cam Whitmore, is there, but like there's also like low end scenarios that are possible if you don't go and get Brandon Ingram, right? You solidify yourself a little bit when you go get like you clearly outline your floor when you go get Brandon Ingram, right? And that's fine. Like that's a really solid floor, and you're consolidating assets, so that's also a positive, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's not a bad target for Houston.